Africa Development Bank set aside $300 million for special agro-processing zones in Nigeria. Oil prices recover from COVID-19 make early weekly gains. Nigeria to appoint advisors for a 3.3 billion euro bond issue through open bid. This is Business Express reaching you from Abuja, the nation's capital, and I am Benny Adams, your guide. The outbreak of COVID-19 in Wuhan, China, now a global health emergency, has had economies counting their losses. Energy experts have been examining the cost as China remains a major market for oil and gas.
Coronavirus has come and has created a very serious demand shock for oil and gas, but not only in the oil and gas. It has impacted supply chains across the world. It has impacted manufacturing, and this means that there's overall decline in growth forecast.
The Nigerian stock market is still recording price depreciation across sectors. However, its year-to-date returns currently stands at plus 3.40%. Bosedi Abel has an update for the week ended Friday, the 14th of February.
It was a mixed trading week on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, where a total of 912.1 million shares worth 12.1 billion naira in 17,083 deals were traded by investors. The NSE All-Share Index and market capitalization both depreciated by 1.11% to close the week at 27,755.87 and 14.4 trillion naira. All other indices finished lower, with the exception of NSE AFRD Viewed and NSE Industrial Goods Indices, which appreciated by 0.11% and 0.78%, while the NSE ASEM Index closed flat. The financial services industry led the activity chart with 624.2 million shares valued at 7.1 billion naira traded in 9,640 deals. The conglomerates industry followed with 93.2 million shares worth 452 million naira. The third place was occupied by the oil and gas industry. Trading in the top three equities were Zenith Bank, Guaranty Trust Bank and UBA. They jointly accounted for 304 million shares worth 5.7 billion naira in 4,290 deals. A total of 1,540 units of exchange-traded products, ETPs, valued at 137,421 naira 20 kobo were traded in the week in 5 deals, as well as 23,923 units of federal government bonds valued at 28.9 million naira. 19 equities appreciated in price during the week, 35 equities depreciated in price, while 109 equities remained unchanged.
The African Development Bank has set aside $300 million for the establishment of the Special Agro-Processing Zones project in the country. Musa Baba Aliu reports that the federal government, through the Minister of Agriculture, says it is committed to ensuring that the zones are established and put to use as proposed by the African Development Bank.
It is an agricultural development project designed by the African Development Bank towards upscaling agricultural productivity in Nigeria. The project is to be jointly funded by the bank, federal government, and participating states. Agricultural clusters are to be established in Abuja, Benue, Kano, and Ogun states under the program. The target crops are cereals, vegetables, cocoa, cotton, livestock including dairy and hides and skin. This forum is therefore organized for discussions on how the takeoff of the project will look like, as well as examine the commitment of the relevant stakeholders.
You need such collaboration between the agricultural sector and the industrial sector so that you can move the economy forward, you can create employment opportunities.
I would like to underline the invaluable support and contribution of the African Development Bank by setting aside the sum of $500 million for this initiative. The ADB has continuously partnered with Nigeria in our efforts to provide solutions to its complex development needs, promoting faster and more inclusive growth in line with government priorities. We shall continue our engagement with ADB to ensure prompt implementation of this initiative, and the Ministry of Finance is committed to it.
The bank has all it takes to take this nation to the next level fully, because we are everywhere and we support smallholder farmers. We are managed by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development.
If plan is well executed, the construction of infrastructure for the special agro-processing zones will commence before August. In Abuja, Musa Baba Aliyu, NTA News.
Thank you, Musa. We now join Amina Nujaim live at the Sheraton Hotel, where the federal government and the African Development Bank are preparing grounds for the actualization of the special agro-industrial processing zones under the 5th Africa operational priority of the bank. Amina, what do you have for us?
Yes, we are at the Sheraton Hotel, where stakeholders in the agricultural sector have come together for the Special Agri-Processing Zone Inception Workshop. It has been a story 9 months in the making, but finally it has come to pass. And for insights on what is really going on and what it takes to achieve this agenda, I have with me Professor Oyeyinka Oyebanji. Professor, 9 months in the making.
Yeah.
How far so far?
So we are very grateful that we started this journey in April last year. The President Muhammadu Buhari gave us a marching order that he wanted a plan, a Nigerian special agro-industrial processing zone. So we started by engaging all the private actors, government actors, all through December 20, where we had all the ministers in the room, deliberate set up a governance system, and then sign off a communique. We did this because in the past we've had issues with people feeling they were not included. So this time around we wanted to include everybody, and I'm glad to say that today we have this inception workshop, which is kick-starting the technical aspects of the job of this initiative, so that our hope is that by July, August, disbursement of funds will start. The bank is committed absolutely. The president of the bank has said it so many times. We have this thing working in so many countries, as I shown today in my slides. So it's not an experiment, it's working.
Okay, earlier on, Professor, the Minister of Agriculture did make mention of the importance of establishing a relationship between the agri sector and industrialization. And now for that fusion to take place, what are you doing about it?
The natural order of agriculture is to move from agriculture to industry. But when you take a raw material, for example, an input from the farm, for you to get the maximum benefit from it, you have to process. Processing means you have to industrialize. You have to do within an industrial factory, adding value to it. So there is no doubt that agriculture and industry are inseparable in terms of adding value to agricultural products. So the two of them, institutionally, we've always had issues, and in fact the failure of the past initiative was due to squabbling between one ministry and the other one, agriculture. So we wanted to avoid that, and thankfully all the ministers have agreed to sign off and work together on this, including also those involving or responsible for infrastructure, road, power. A zone is a special geographic zone. It has to have all those things for the special zone to work optimally.
There you have it. It is a fusion of private sector, government sector, agriculture, as well as industrialization. It's back to the studio.
Thank you. And still with the processing zones is Monday Nyambi, Tax Manager, Nigeria Special Agro Processing Zones Program, working for the African Development Bank. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. 500 million. What is that's what the African Development Bank is investing in the special agro processing zones. How can this help uplift job opportunities?
Well, just a bit of a background on special agro-industrial processing zones. So these are zones where in areas of high agriculture potential. So definitely there's a lot of jobs created along the entire value chain, because we look at the process from input supply to production, to basically aggregation, then processing of the aggregated produce. Then we look at taking it to domestic and international markets. So across the entire value chain, from input supply all the way to distribution, to equipment hire, mechanization, and all that, there's jobs for the youth across the entire value chain.
Okay, with this new vista of hope, are there critical modalities put in place to ensure that all of these components identified enable a kind of smooth takeoff of the sustenance of such zones?
Yes, we've, in our experience in other countries, because we're rolling out this project and program, different countries, regional member countries of the bank have approached the bank for support. And in our experience, we've got some lessons that we've learned. We've identified critical success factors for a project of this magnitude and size to take off and run smoothly. Among them is firstly that it must be public sector enabled and private sector led. So definitely the government has to come in as a public good, put in the roads that are needed, invest in the water resources that are required, bring in power that is needed to run this operation, and so on. ICT, waste management services, and so on. So this is definitely required. So smart climate-proof infrastructure is also a big requirement, because this is all needed from taking the food from the farm to the fork. This whole network is supposed to be established. So in terms of anchor investors and facility operators, this is very critical. We need people with experience to be able to manage the SAPZs. Otherwise, if it's run by somebody with no experience, it could be something of serious concern. Another issue very critical to ensure the success of this project is to ensure that there's high productivity. So the Federal Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development today mentioned at the Inception workshop the importance of productivity enhancement. So he mentioned mechanization as one. He mentioned good seeds. So basically the inputs that come in must be good to yield that produce that will create a marketable surplus that is available for processing. So this is very important. So that's one of the critical success factors that we look at.
Oh, okay, from all indications from what you've said, it means a lot has to be done. Exactly. How long would this take? Yes, this huge amount of money is coming in from the African Development Bank. Is that enough? Do we have the expertise on ground to ensure that the takeoff is actually smooth, and not just smooth, but it is soon? In
fact, like you mentioned, to keep the cost down, a lot of efforts are ongoing in Nigeria for agro-industrialization. So just, the bank looks at, we've got 5 priority areas that the bank is looking at now, and one of them is lighting up and powering up Africa, so which is our energy sector. We're looking at the transport sector, so we've got infrastructure there. We've got our industrialization sector, and then ultimately it's about improving the quality of life of Africans. That's also where our Feed Africa strategy comes in. So even as a bank, we're looking at low-hanging fruits. We're looking at brownfield projects. So where have efforts already begun in terms of industrializing the agriculture sector? So if our bank, for instance, is financing projects in the water sector, or there's already irrigation facilities that exist in a particular cluster, we take that as already existing backbone infrastructure and take that brownfield operation so that even the costs are less. So we're basically going to reduce the cost by riding on brownfield, existing brownfield operations. And secondly, we're also going to use strategic partners to come in with the financing. Yes, 500 million might seem like a lot, but there's a lot of financing required, even for the smallholder farmers or for the SMEs that are setting up to do even the primary processing, for instance. The large anchor farmers or the large processors also need financing. So over and above the government also needing financing to put in that backbone infrastructure, all the actors across the entire value chain require financing. So more financing will be needed, more partners will be needed, but we'll leverage on what our other partners are doing at the moment.
Okay, with all this all planned out, all mapped out, and we have the African Continental Free Area, what does that mean for Nigeria?
Actually, it presents a large opportunity. One of the goals of the SAPC is to make Nigeria a net exporter of food. Currently, the food import bill for Nigeria is pretty high. And once food is produced and processed locally, it can then be exported to the outside market. And this new continental free trade area presents an opportunity for Nigeria to export to the African market and thereby becoming a net exporter of food.
Okay, is that some sort of attraction for the youth following all the low-hanging fruits that might come in? Would it actually attract our youth to go into agriculture the way it is now?
Absolutely. Definitely currently, with the youth bulge and the lack of jobs available for the youth, it's actually a problem across the whole continent. Unemployment rates are just plummeting. They're just going out of the roof. So this is an opportunity for the youth to come in. Like I had mentioned earlier in our discussion, there's opportunities and jobs across the entire value chain. So you can find youths can set up small businesses, for instance. So it's an opportunity also to create entrepreneurs, not only just people who are employed. So there's opportunities for the youth in farming. So on the production side, there's opportunity for the youth in import supply. They can create SMEs and provide tractor hire, for instance. They could run that business. That's just one example.
That is good news for not just Nigeria, but for the entire African continent.
Absolutely.
Monday Nyame, it's a pleasure having you on Business Express.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much.
It was a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Moving on. There is a sustained demand for cocoa and ginger in the international market, sustaining growth in their pricing as oil prices rebound following reduced worries over COVID-19. Let's take a peek into the commodities market. On that note, let's see how the Naira is faring alongside other major currencies. The federal government has said it plans to appoint advisors for a 3.3 billion euro bond issue through an open competitive bid process and expects to complete an approval process for the sale soon. The Debt Management Office at the weekend stated that the new Eurobond will be used to partly fund the government's 2020 budget deficit and refinance an existing $500 million Eurobond due in January next year. The Minister of State for Budget and National Planning, Clem Agba, has expressed hope for an improved economy in the new development plan on the government short-term plan ERGP, which is coming to a close this year. He explained that its review is currently ongoing to ascertain its performance. He said the ministry has already started the development process, stating that the National Steering Committee for the new plan would be inaugurated in March this year. The minister was speaking at the Center for Management Development CMD centers in Abuja and Lagos, where he described the deficit in the agency's infrastructure and staff capacity gaps as a hindrance to the agency in achieving its set goals. The capital market closed first day of trade in the week on a negative note. The all-share index depreciated by 0.67% to close 27,570.94 basis points, with market capitalization at 14.3 trillion naira. 134.6 million shares worth 1.5 billion naira in 3,302 deals exchanged hands on the floor of the exchange. Zenith Bank, United Capital PLC and Guarantee Bank were the most active stocks. Owando, Afriprod and Custodian were the top traders, while Guarantee, Boasment and the international breweries led the decliners. Meanwhile, Bosede Ebel has been monitoring the performance of major stock markets around the world.
On the global scene, Asian markets traded mixed on Monday as investors continue to assess the potential economic fallout from coronavirus. In an effort to ease the shock of the virus outbreak on businesses, China is planning targeted tax cuts while increasing government spending. Shanghai Composite rose 2.28% to 2,983.62. Hang Seng Index rose 0.52%, while Nikkei depreciated 0.69%. European stocks rose. DAX appreciated 0.11%, FTSE 0.24%, and CAC 40 also topped 0.06%. In the United States, the Dow Jones Industrial Average dipped 25.23 points to close at 29,398.08. Earlier in the day, the Dow fell more than 100 points. The S&P 500 gained 0.18%. Nasdaq Composite also advanced 0.2% to 9,731.18 and hit an all-time closing high. Africa's stocks opened mixed, with South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40, Tunisia's Tunidex, and Namibia's overall index posting gains.
Nigeria has got her eyes fixed on the global palm oil market, whereby 2021 market value of the produce is expected to hit $92.84 billion, 4 times the budget size of Nigeria. Nigeria currently ranks 5th in the global production capacity ranking, behind Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Colombia. Players along the palm oil value chain are keen into government's drive for self-sufficiency to upscale Nigeria's 904,000 metric tons annual production capacity. That is a wrap on this edition of Business Express. We inform you that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on the NTA's channel. You can also communicate with us on Twitter, and the handle is @NTA News Now. The hashtag is #BizX. Business Express returns on Wednesday. I am Benny Adams.